Instead of Indiana Jones, there was incandescent ohms. I could not find a copy of my favorite. It was Gasless in Seattle, taken from Sleepless in Seattle, where Tom Hanks had a cord in his hand, and I think his girlfriend would have a gas can in her hand. So anyway, we did have some rather nice meetings of people getting together, and that creativity throughout our club. This gentleman here on the left, this chassis he built from scratch, from tubular metal, and you can see these big, heavy old lead acid batteries. But then the pièce de résistance is this beautiful wooden body he created to go on top of it. I mean, so it's always been inspirational for me to be in the club and see all this inspiration. One of our gentlemen, he's no longer with us, Dave Cloud, one of the most prolific builders and converters of electric vehicles. If you really know your cars and you put your hand over that, you'll see that the front of that car is a Geo Metro. And he was a kind of an old timer. He said, I think lead acid batteries are just as good as lithium. And to prove it, I'm going to make myself a speedster that'll go down the freeway at 60 miles an hour for 200 miles on lead batteries. Well, he accomplished it. Others went forward by converting the Volkswagen Beetle. This gentleman here on the red Beetle, he was rather well-heeled, and he was one of the first in the club to take the lithium batteries that were available at the time, $12,000 worth, and put in the back of this Volkswagen, doubling the range and the longevity of his batteries. On the right here, another famous member of our club, Roderick Wilde, the father of the National Electric Drag Racing Association. Yes, you heard me right, the National Electric Drag Racing Association. And this really quick Ford Roadster here was on the front page of many, many hot rod magazines, all electric. Now the Geo Metro, this is a normal Geo Metro. Just 5 years later, after the gentleman spent all that money for his Volkswagen, my friend Jeff Finn took the lead batteries out of his Geo Metro and replaced it with a small pack of lithium batteries for a mere $7,500. I mean, that's just a drop in the cost of batteries. And many of the old timers watching today might recognize this truck. That is a 1950 Studebaker pickup truck. This gentleman, again, with more money and time on his hands than any of us, he's got a full AC drive system similar to what's in Teslas today, and a full set of lithium batteries. So a beautiful piece of machinery, and made many of our car shows over the years. But this is one of the cars that really turned the corner, as it were, back in the early 2000s, the General Motors EV1. And if you have not heard or seen the movie, Who Killed the Electric Car? My friend Chris Payne was the director. You must rent it. It's very available. It will tell you the whole story about the development of the electric car that General Motors did. It sold about, did not sell, leased about 1,300 of them. And as the leases ran out, the bean counters at General Motors said, this is not a moneymaker. Let's get out of this. No more leases. Don't let them extend the lease. They gathered them together and crushed them, actually destroyed them. And that became the progenitor for this movie, Who Killed the Electric Car? But some of them didn't crush. These are S10 pickups that were using the same technology as the EV1. And also Ford Motor Company had their truck that were built during that same time period. It all had to do with some environmental and laws in California mostly. But these vehicles are still running today. And my friend that has this Ford Ranger spent a goodly amount and updated it to lithium just recently. But here's the one that really started things happening. Elon Musk and Tesla Motors, and taking these beautiful roadsters from England, from Lotus, and putting lithium batteries in the tail feathers and electric motors, AC motors, and showing the world that, an electric car can be sporty, can be quick, it can have a couple 100 miles of range, and it really started to change how we looked at electric vehicles. Others around the same time, of course, Toyota had the RAV4 AV with electric batteries, and also the early Chevrolet Volt with a V came along around that time. Now, high schools have been a wonderful place for kids to learn how to do things and build things. This is Ballard High School, and Professor McHugh and his students built this dragster, and he did something a little bit different. Instead of a 300 or 400 volt battery pack, he went up to 800 volts. And this car caught the eye of people at General Motors and at Ford Motor Company. Soon thereafter, they got a hold of Mr. McHugh and said, "Say, can you get some of your people and come over to General Motors and help us build a brand new Chevrolet Camaro, 800 or 900 horsepower and an 800 volt pack, so we can show that at the drag strips and gain some notoriety?" Fine, yes, we did. They did. And soon thereafter, well, Ford, not to be undone, went to Mr. McHugh and some of our people from the Seattle EV Association and built this 1,200 horsepower Ford Mustang. And when this thing hits the green light, the front of this car, even though it's a little bit heavy with equipment, comes right off the ground. So, and this going to 800 volts is nothing new now. Now Porsche and the Porsche Taycan electric is an 800 volt system, and it's said to charge a little faster than the other system, and that's born to light by this new Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is coming out this next year. They say that 5 minutes of charging will give you 60 miles of traveling range. Wow. in their system. Not to be outdone, there's General Motors and the Hummer electric, which is coming out this next year as well. But really, I think it's the Tesla Model S, a beautiful 5-passenger sedan that really changed heads, both in General Motors and throughout the automotive world. And they keep on growing. They have another one coming out, slightly different in the nose. Gesundheit. That has 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds and 200 miles an hour top speed. I don't know why anybody needs that. I mean, it's just like horsepower wars, But not to be undone, this is the new Tesla Roadster Model 2, which will come out in the next year and a half to 2 years. But here's the thing. At $250,000 a copy, you might say, well, that is for the Bill Gates and those other folks. Maybe Jay Leno's already got one on order, but you put the specifications of this car up against any supercar, $1 million cars, gas-powered cars. It is superior in every way, shape, form, range, per tank full, speed, acceleration. So, although it's far above my pay grade, I think it's still something that needs to be done. Back to Earth, this is my new car, the Chevrolet Bolt. And I went from my 2012 Mitsubishi had 66 horsepower. This has 200 horsepower, and it can be bought for about the same price as what I paid back in 2012. Hyundai has many more models coming out that are affordable, from the $25,000 to $45,000 price. And of course, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, I've seen a couple of these out on the road, or as we say, I've seen it in the wild. And of course, the Volvo. I live near the University of Washington, and there's a Volvo dealer on 55th Street, and he's got several of them in the showroom, waiting for somebody to come down and take them for a ride. Yeah, we remember back in the day when the surfers and hippies all had Volkswagen buses and all painted up in different colors. Now, this is going to be a little more money, but the performance of that new van, which is due out in 2024, is going to be out of this world for the family. And I'm sure they'll be turned into campers and all kinds of stuff. But, the surfers and the hippies are now in their 60s, 70s, and 80s. They probably be able to afford that. See, also, though, the Volkswagen has, the VW ID3 and VW ID4 that are much more affordable for the everyday person. But, pickup trucks, everybody knows that Ford F-150 is the most popular kind of a truck there is out there, right? This one on the top is Rivian. Now, no one knew what Rivian was 12 years ago, but now they've got a contract with Amazon to replace thousands of delivery trucks with electric delivery trucks built and manufactured by Rivian for Amazon. And of course, I can't talk about pickup trucks in the future without talking about the Cybertruck. It's kind of, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Although it has the same specifications as most pickups for pulling power, towing power, cargo power, and everything else. So, and they've already got 100,000 orders waiting. So we'll have to see what happens there. Now, in closing, I'm going to throw my phone away. How do we charge things? These are all the various chargers that you can place on the outside of your garage or your driveway. And like I said earlier, these are not the chargers. The chargers are in the car. These are merely super, super safe extension cords. Until you plug that into the car talks to the wall and the wall talks to the car, it goes click, and now we have power flowing. Some of these are only $300-400 a piece if you want to charge at a faster rate, like 240 volts. But mind you, every electric vehicle built now, new car, comes with a device that's small and can be plugged into 110 or 120. And if you don't drive very many miles per day, that's more than enough power. That's what I did the first year I had my little Mitsubishi. Free. You don't have to pay an electrician. You just plug it into 110. Now, well, how do I get charged up? Every one of these green things on the map here is a place at 110 or 240 to charge up. And the ones in yellow or orange are super fast charging stations. And this is a thing called PlugShare, and it's almost worldwide. So if you ever want to wonder, well, do I have any charging stations close to the house where I don't have to put anything in my own garage? Just check out PlugShare. And if you push on one of these, what you come up with is a detail. And this one is very close to Lake Forest Park at the Fred Meyers. And it shows the type of plugs that it is good for. It shows you the price of how much it's going to cost you. Now, mind you, that's about 4 times more than what you pay at home for charging. It's still in an emergency, or if you're out on the highway driving to California, one of these charging stations is just what you need. And of course, for fast charging, we still have the Chatamo type on your right here and the SAE type on the left, like many of the new cars are using, like my car, the Chevy Bolt and Ford and others. And these are available for a small fee along the freeways and the highways of the United States. Matter of fact, the Tesla has its whole network of chargers from coast to coast, from Canada to Mexico, similar machines. And down at the QFC store near me in University Village, 4 or 5 of these stations are just being put together now. That ends coming to the end of my little speech, and I think everyone should know a little bit about how we talk about electric vehicles. And that's, how big is the battery? And I know it's not filled up with gasoline. What goes in there? Well, power goes in there, and we measure that power in watts or in kilowatts for 1,000 watts. What is that? A hairdryer running for an hour costs you 9 cents in Seattle. That is 1 kilowatt hour. Now, my last little electric car only held 16 kilowatt hours because it was only good for 60 or 70 miles. My new car is built for 250 miles. That's 56 kilowatt hours. So that's how we judge the size of the tank. How many kilowatt hours can you handle? And last but not least, this big debate comes out on the New York Times or the Washington Post almost monthly. That electric cars are no truly cleaner than electrics because, gasoline. But this little dissertation, and I'm told that on the sidebar, these YouTube addresses have been posted for you to look up later. This is a wonderful little 13 or 14-minute dissertation on just how dirty gasoline is. All the things that happen to fill that tank, and then when you put it in a tank, it burns and creates more. I can't imagine. It's at 11:29. Oh my God! And we didn't have time for questions. Oh, I'm so sorry.
If you put your email, I can put your email in the chat for you, and people can email you questions they have.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll do that right now. Hold on. Okay. Oh wait, actually, I only have the seattleeva.org. Do you?
Well, that's one of about 4 or 5 things I sent you.
Yeah, I put all of those in the chat right
Okay.
now, so they can click on all those links. Do you have an email that you want people to use if they have questions?
I did want to talk about fuel cells, but
Hi there.
Hi, folks.
Hi, Sam. Glad you made it.
Thanks.
You jumped the gun, but it looks like people are adding pretty fast.
No worries. As people are coming in, I would be happy to see if you would like to place in the chat any specific questions that you would hope that I could cover. So that way I could try to organically make sure I answer your questions as I present. And if you don't have anything, that's okay as well, but it'd just be helpful to know if there's anything specific that people are really interested in hearing about. So
I'm interested in heat pumps.
In heat pumps, sure. We're definitely going to cover that. Now, because we only have a half hour, we're not going to be able to get deep into any one topic, but we'll certainly give an overview on heat pumps.
Can I make what can somebody who lives in a townhome, rented townhomes, as a renter, how can we make our homes more efficient? Are there like solar window shades and things like that we can invest in?
Okay, that's great. And as people are coming in, I mentioned to the folks that were here right away that if you would like to put any specific questions you want answered in the chat. I've been getting some verbally, but you can feel free to just add them in the chat. And I'll do my best to just organically answer them as I go in the presentation today. But if you have anything specific, feel free to hit the chat bar. Thank you, Steven. Tankless versus tank hot water here. That's great question. I think I'm gonna wait just 1 more minute before moving forward. And my kids are dusting, so you hear the sneezing in the background. That's what they're doing. All right. Trying to make sure I can see and present and watch the chat bar at the same time. I'm trying to find where that setting is. All right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and get started. And what I'll do is I'll try my best to keep an eye on the chat as we go. Yeah, you guys are asking some great questions. I'll try to see if I can include them as I go here. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Sam, and I am one of the co-founders of Green Canopy Homes. We build high efficiency homes. We started with doing deep green remodels in the Seattle area and expanded into Portland. And now we only work on new construction projects ranging from small apartments to single family homes and everything in between, including townhomes, row houses, little cottages, cottage communities, things like that. We have teams split up between 2 different locations, Seattle and Portland, as I mentioned, and we also work on projects that are on our own account, but then also work directly with developers who need a general contractor or design team. We have our own integrated architecture team also within our company. And what I'm going to focus on today is, and Green Canopy's mission, our theory of change, is to has been focused in the early years on resource scarcity and global warming, and that's a lot of what I'm going to be focusing on today. Some of these other theories of change impacts that we want to make, I'm not going to be focusing on so much in this presentation, just mostly focusing on energy efficiency. And the way that we think about energy efficiency on the home front is that there are a number of solutions that are required in order to see a carbon-free and carbon-free future. And so obviously we're talking about transportation. There's some conversations about natural resources and lands. And what we're going to be focusing on today is clean buildings, specifically on in the residential sector. What you as homeowners or renters, home occupants can do, and what you're thinking about, how you can think about energy efficiency at home. And the reason why this is so relevant is our built environment accounts for about 40% of our global CO2 emissions, which I've seen some studies showing that transportation is more in the 15 to 20% range. There's lots of controversy in terms of how that's accounted for, but the point is our built environment accounts for a lot of our consumption of energy and therefore greenhouse gas emissions. And so when I was thinking about how to organize our thoughts here in this presentation specifically, I wanted to think about the ways that it could be relevant to you as community members, as homeowners again, and tenants in buildings. So at home, the thing to pay attention to when we're thinking about all the different slides that I'm going to be going through is, what are those points of opportunity where you have an opportunity to make a change? So one of those opportunities is at points of upgrade. Everything that I'm going to be saying today, you're not going to necessarily just all of a sudden demolish your house and build a new net zero energy efficient home or net zero or energy efficient home in place of that, right? First of all, we probably can't, most of us can't afford to do that. And it's also probably not the wise thing to do. So what we're looking for are those points of upgrade. So for example, you have a furnace going out and you need to upgrade your furnace. Well, that's a point of upgrade where you can make a change. Another point of change is a remodel. So you might be doing a full gut remodel, or you may just be adding an addition to your home. That's certainly a time where you could consider, oh, I might be able to do something different than what I first considered before. And then also when you're purchasing a new home, what are the types of homes that you're going to be focusing on? How are you going to vote with your dollars, with your hard-earned dollars, to purchase a home that's going to be aligned with your values? And then finally, if you're building a new construction custom home yourself, or you're putting together a co-op community with 15 of your closest friends, I hope that you'd be able to take some of these tenets and principles and apply it to whatever it is that you're thinking about building. So those are the points of change, of opportunity. Some people call it, point of crisis. A crisis is a point of change where you can choose one way or another. And sometimes the crisis comes upon us, and sometimes the crisis comes as a matter of choice. So in these points of choice, the three things I want to be focusing on is, first of all, reducing energy loss. The second point is reducing consumption. And the third is how to switch fuels away from fossil fuels. So those are the three key points I'm going to be focusing on as we go. So when we're thinking about homes as a system, I like to use an analogy of a jacket as a way to think about how to reduce energy loss. So when we're buying a jacket, oftentimes people just go like, oh, I'm just going to go to Fred Meyer and buy a $20 rubber jacket. And our expectations for a rubber $20 jacket is pretty low, right? We're just like, okay, it's going to rain on me. I'm just going to try to stay dry. But as you all know, most of the time, if you're going to wear a rubber jacket and climb Mount Si, by the time you get down, you're probably going to be more wet on the inside of your jacket than you would have been if you just, went with a cotton t-shirt. And the reason why is because that rubber jacket isn't allowing water vapor to escape the shell. So you could buy a more expensive jacket like a Gore-Tex jacket, and people seem to know that you pay a little bit more or a lot more, actually sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 times more for a membrane jacket, but you get better performance out of it. And that's what we think about when it comes to the actual building wrap. So there's lots of different types of building wrap, and that's just one of the layers, one of the components of your home. So if you're building new, this is something to think about. I'm not going to spend too much time here because most of you may not be building a new construction home, but this is one of the layers to consider when you're thinking about the whole house as a system of little parts. It's an important part. Another part is insulation. And this is kind of an obvious one, but it's kind of like looking at the layers when you're going out again for a hike. You could wear, a cotton sweater or a wool sweater, and that's nice. It does a good job. That's kind of like our old style insulation that we just try to cram in as much insulation as we can. It's kind of lumpy and it's kind of loose in certain places, but then there's a lot of it in some places. So that's in comparison to like a down jacket where it's, every single cavity is filled across, which makes for, as we know, a much more comfortable, evenly heated jacket. So that's another high priority when you're thinking about building a new home or even just a small addition. If you do a great job with insulation, you're going to be way more comfortable in the end. And it's a very, very small bill in comparison to all the things that we Americans typically put our money into, which is stuff that you see, feel, and touch, the countertops and the appliances, how shiny they are and everything. In fact, we probably spend way more on our coffee or our coffee makers on our countertops than we even think about putting money into our insulation. So, so that's the insulation itself is kind of like it's kind of like that down jacket. Then there's this other component that I think can be really controversial for people. And since I have very little time and I have to go through it relatively quickly, but it's this idea of air sealing. And I think there's a lot of fear around this idea of air sealing because of in the 1980s, we sealed up our homes too tight. And so there was this history of some homes not being able to breathe. And so there's this mentality of like, oh, we can't build it too tight. But the reality is, if we don't build our homes tight, most of our energy escapes through holes in our home. So it's kind of like, trying to fill a bottle of water when there's a hole at the bottom of it. It's just constantly leaking all the time. And so the premise for energy efficient building is to try to seal up all the holes. And I'm going to get to how to get fresh air in a second. And that's a really important component of sealing a home, is that right after that, you have to, you build it tight, but you ventilate right. That's kind of the premise for how you build homes. So how does your home breathe? Naturally, most homes that were built are already existing. They do breathe, but they breathe in places where you don't intend it to breathe necessarily. So a lot of our fresh air, if you can call it fresh anymore, comes through our crawl space. It can come through gaps and cracks in your walls. And sometimes people say like, oh, I want fresh air to be coming in, so I don't want to build too tight. But I think a kind of a funny little metaphor for folks in the energy efficient building sector say like, well, that's great, but it's kind of like telling your kids to breathe through a straw that's like poking down into your crawl space. That's essentially what you're saying if you want your home to naturally breathe through the cracks. Or it's basically putting a straw into the wall and saying, yeah, go ahead and take a deep breath out of that. So the idea is, once you've thought about building a more energy efficient shell that is airtight, then you have to ventilate right. And ventilating right means that you're going to install an air handler of some type. Now, not all of us have the opportunity to install a whole new air handling system into our homes, but if you do have the opportunity, an energy recovery ventilator or a heat recovery ventilator is a system where fresh air is coming in all the time, and the exhaust air, the stale air, is going out almost all the time. Oftentimes these run on a cycle, and some of them will run literally 100% of the time, but they're very energy efficient pieces of equipment that can modulate depending on how much humidity it's sensing inside the home. So this is basically, replicates the lungs of your home, except it's controlling it, and it's also extracting. There's also filters built into them. So then if there's, for example, air pollutants from fires, forest fires and things like that, we've had good success with our homeowners saying that they've been able to get fresh air even when forest fires are clouding up our atmosphere. So fresh air is pulled from the inside, outside. Warm, stale air is pulled from the inside, and then it's passed through the heat exchanger. So lots of the energy exchanges before coming into your home. So we're going to move on to heat pumps. So we just covered how a home breathes. So the shell, the envelope, that's how we're trying to reduce energy loss. Now we're going to start moving into reducing energy consumption. And some of you asked about heat pumps. I think I'm going to start with, I'm not going to be able to go through all the details of this. So I'm just going to start with the premise. Most of us growing up, myself included, even 15 years ago, whenever someone says, you're going to build a new home, what kind of fuel do you want? And most of us have been told growing up, gas. Gas is what you want because it's the most efficient, right? That's most of what we've heard from the 80s, 90s, 2000s. We kind of assumed that that was the case. And for a while, it was the case because technology really hadn't caught up with us. And then also another piece of it, it's not necessarily about efficiency, it was more about the cost of fuel. Electricity continues to become more and more clean, and then fossil fuels are going to continue to get more expensive and are never as efficient as heat pumps. And I'll just give you a quick analogy. The heat pump equipment that you see here on this page have an efficiency rating of 2.5 times or more. So 250 to 350% efficiency. Whereas in gas equipment, there's no way to get past 100%. So for example, the house that I built about 15 years ago has a high efficiency boiler that heats the home. So I use gas. I haven't switched over yet in my home. But that boiler can never be more efficient than 100%. It can be 99.9% efficient, but it can never breach the 100% mark. Whereas on heat pumps, the technology is such that it's not trying to efficiently convert electricity into heat energy. What it's actually doing is it's collecting heat energy and delivering it. So that's why you're able to get 250, 350, sometimes even more than 400% efficiency when it comes to heat pumps. This is why electricity is actually more efficient today, far, far more efficient. The other piece to consider is when you're buying new appliances, most of us, myself included, think about features first. What do I want the appliance to do? But one of the key things, that's just a small thing, is to think about just making sure that when you're doing your search, always start with an energy certified appliance. It's a really simple thing to do, but as long as that sticker's on there, then it's meeting at least a base requirement of efficiency. As we all as a society continue to vote with our dollars this way, it's going to allow for more technology to continue to move in the direction of greater and greater efficiency. Okay, this is a really hot topic. And most of the time when I talk to home buyers who are considering buying an all-electric home, which is what Green Canopy has always done for the last 15 years, or since 2010, we've only built all-electric homes. one of the key problems for consumers is, oh, but I want to be able to cook with gas. And I understand that, because most of us grew up thinking that gas is the best, right? I mean, you look at cooking shows, most of the cooking shows have gas ranges, you know, and you can see the fire, and it's like kind of stirs this emotion in us to feel like, yeah, we're really doing something with that fire. The problem is, one, I didn't know this when I put a gas range into my home and have 3 kids that are now 12, 12, and 14, but there's a lot of off-gassing that comes from gas cooking. So there's formaldehyde, carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide that's constantly coming into your indoor atmosphere when you cook with gas. So that's one of the key problems. And there's been studies to show that actually people that cook with gas have a less healthy indoor air environment sometimes than what's outside. And another thing that I heard is that, or read before, is that oftentimes our gas-powered equipment inside wouldn't even be legal if it was a gas-powered equipment, a type of gas-powered equipment for exterior use, like a lawnmower. And the problem with this obviously is a health issue, but then there's this other problem, which is bringing fossil fuel into our homes. Once you lock a homeowner like myself into using fossil fuel, it becomes really difficult to change in the future, right? So I've been in our home since 2009, and it's probably going to be at least another 5 years before the equipment switches over to electric. So when you lock in to a choice, such as electricity or gas, it stays there for a while. The good news is that induction cooking has become a lot more efficient and even more powerful than gas. And this is just one little example I did in one of our homes, where I put a little hot teapot over my gas range at home and recorded how long it took at full power, 16,000 BTUs, in comparison to this induction range in one of our new homes. And at home, it took 3 minutes to go to boil. And then on this induction range, it took less than 50 seconds to go to boil. So far more powerful and far more control. That's the other piece. Induction is different than the old school style electric coils that are just placed over a ceramic top. So look for the word induction. It uses magnets in order to heat the pan itself, rather than just trying to heat the top of the range. So if you're looking for a new range, that would be recommended. The trick is you often have to upgrade your electrical power for that location in order to switch over. So that's the only tricky thing. Time is moving quickly here. Another key component that you can add when you're upgrading your service, for example, is to get an energy monitor. And that can help you, kind of like the Prius effect. If you're paying attention to where your energy is going, it can empower you to make different choices and to think about how you're using your energy. It's like if something is invisible, it's really hard to manage. So once you put energy in front of you on an app or on your desktop, and you can start to think about your energy consumption, it gives you the power to make choices. So it gives you agency. That's something that we include in all of our homes. I can say that less than a quarter of our home buyers actually activate the system and get really excited about it. But those that do, it becomes a powerful part of their daily living and they get excited about it. Finally, solar energy. I put this purposefully at the back end of this portion of the presentation because oftentimes we get really excited about what you see, feel, and touch. And solar panels are very sexy because you can see it on the street and you can show off and you can kind of wear it on your sleeve and be really proud about your solar power. However, all the non-sexy things that I talked about before, like insulation, you can't even see it after it's installed, you can't even touch it. But those things are actually far more important before you think about solar. So if you're thinking about a budget for a home that you're building new, or a cottage or a second home that you're building, it's really important to consider the core first. You know, it's the cake before the frosting. And I really think about solar panel as frosting because you can always add it on later. But you really can only build your envelope for your home just one time. And you know, there's different solar installers that can come in and help you with that. I'm just going to show you a really quick example of a project that is on the market in Portland right now. This is a net zero ready home. And as you can see in the top right of the biggest photo, that's a heat pump that's delivering cool and warm air into the home, actually heat and cold into the home. And then also above the kitchen countertop, that's a energy recovery ventilator. So these homes look like normal homes. This is a net zero ready home. So if you were to put solar panels on it, it would have zero energy bills because it is so efficient that the solar panels on a home like this would not even need energy coming in most of the time. Oftentimes our net zero energy homes that have solar panels, the only bill that our homeowners have is the bill for administrative account to be hooked up to the grid. So the idea with net zero energy homes is that you basically use the grid like your battery. And so at nighttime, you're using energy from the standard, like Puget Sound Energy or whatever your service provider is. And in the daytime, you're building your energy up and oftentimes pumping it back into the grid. And then over the course of a year, typically you're not going to have any energy consumption at all, or maybe just a little bit. So here's another view of another home of the same project. And view of the kitchen. So they look just like normal homes. The only difference is the equipment and stuff that you can't see behind the walls. A resource for many of you homeowners is to get to builtgreen.net. That's a place that you can find energy auditors. So if you need support in how to make your home more energy efficient, you can find a list of energy auditors at www.builtgreen.net. There are other green resources. If you're in Portland area, Earth Advantage is a great certification body there. And of course, there's the Northwest Eco Building Guild here in the Seattle area. If you're ever looking to connect with other green builders or tiny home builders, that's a great resource. Great group of people there. And Green Canopy, we provide services for investors. We don't do any custom homes, but we do provide services that you see outlined here. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can feel free to email me directly at sam@greencanopy.com. I am kind of busy these days, so please give me a little bit of grace to respond in terms of response time, but I will always do my best to get back to you if you have any practical questions that I might be able to help you with or any connections that I can help you with. You can also subscribe to our newsletter at greencanopy.com. You can find us there, and you can, at the very bottom of every page on our website, you can subscribe to our newsletter if you want to learn more in terms of what we're thinking about in terms of energy efficiency and green building. I have just 3 more minutes. One more thing that I have not been able to talk about today is the idea that we have grown and have been in our own journey of growth in the way that we think about energy efficiency and building. And I can't finish a conversation without saying that affordable home ownership, access to housing, the discriminatory and racial zoning laws that have been in place in our country for many decades is a challenge, and it's not covered in this presentation, but it's something that we're thinking a lot about. And a green movement without thinking about social justice is going to be no movement at all. We need to think about how we include everyone. Living in a home, in a safe, healthy home, is an unalienable right for all of our community members. And so that's an area that I can't address in a presentation like this, except just to say that I appreciate you guys are engaging on this level. And if you're ever thinking about the home front, continue to think about how we can include those of us who can't afford to live in Puget Sound anymore because it's just gotten so expensive. And we're trying to figure out how to work on that issue. I have 2 minutes left, and I'm going to try to just look through stuff that I know that I've missed. Oh gosh, there's a lot here. Yes. Okay, I'm going to try to hit backup systems for power outages really quick. Practically speaking, what I described in terms of being connected to the grid is not the most practical for most in-city environments. It's really when we're thinking about battery or battery-powered homes is a completely different topic altogether. I'm sorry, I've run out of time.